We began as a vision. We've become so much more. Today, from Yorkshire and London, the British Library cares for a living, breathing collection that grows every day, just like the knowledge it fuels. From scientists to novelists, from family historians to students, we've answered thousands of questions.
And helped me to finish my thesis.
We look after the UK's culture and heritage, both physical and digital, curating and preserving for future generations. We are the gateway to a world of wonder.
Hands on the bridge feel the rhythm of the train. Hands on the window feel the rhythm of the rain.
Where young minds are lit up and
anyone can join in.
Hands on your heart feel the rhythm inside. Hands on the rhythm.
all across the UK, with the help of our library partners, we ignite imaginations and help new businesses to grow. We are international. The relationships we've built pave the way for the innovations of tomorrow. Our events and exhibitions inspire new discoveries and spark conversations. We are everyone's library, and together, we're just getting started.
Please welcome the 14th Librarian of Congress, Dr. Carla Hayden, and the Chief Executive of the British Library, Sir Roly Keating.
Nice to meet you. We're going to start with full disclosure. We have been jealous of the British Library for quite a while, and you see I'm even speaking with a fake accent. However, congratulations on the 50th anniversary of the British Library. Now, I just have to say, the Library of Congress is 223 years old, and Britain is centuries old. So could you explain to our audience, why is the British Library so young?
Do you know, one of the nice, thank you, Carla, and how nice it is to be here, and what a spectacular place to be, thank you. One of the nice things about this anniversary is people keep saying how young you are, which is not always the case with a birthday or an anniversary. And yes, it is a little confusing because we do have roots that go back quite a long way. So, and I sometimes say that one of the wonderful things about this job is that you get to be in an institution that's old and young all at the same time. So the old bit is that, of course, the British Library includes collections most notably inherited from the British Museum Library. And when people think, by the way, about the famous round reading room or Karl Marx writing Das Kapital, that was the British Museum Library. And that, of course, does indeed date as an institution back to the mid-18th century, and then it, in turn, inherited remarkable personal collections that were built up over the 100 years or more before. And yes, of course, if you really want age of collections, you've got, as you have, amazing ancient papyri or Chinese oracle bones or other things that take you right back thousands of years. But in 1973, Britain was looking around and realizing in that post-war period, what do we not have? And actually, the truth was we did not have a standalone national library. We had this extraordinary collection within an extraordinary museum. And also, there were by that time a number of other national, quasi-national library collections, institutions, many of them to do with science and scientific research, which the British Museum was not so strong on. There was a National Central Library, which was a much more open, democratic kind of a library, national library. There was the National Bibliography, because this was the emergent age of data. And what the policymakers in the UK did, very boldly, they took a very, very deep breath and we say we're going to extract that heritage collection and combine it with these other organizations and turn it into a new kind of library where we're actually going to put knowledge to work. And this was a rebuild. This was historically a sort of post-war rebuild. And this was about contributing not just to history and memory and culture and creativity, of course all of those things, but also to innovation, to science, to industry and business. And that's been, if you like, the particular characteristic, I think, spirit of the British Library since then. And it meant that that new entity, which took a long time to find its feet physically, because I guess the HQ was still in the British Museum for another 25 years, at least in London, until it moved to the red brick building at St Pancras. How many people here have been to the red brick building at St? Okay, quite a few. Let's go. It's not that unfamiliar. But that's another birthday, by the way. That is 25 years since Her Majesty the Queen opened that. But eventually, this new sister institution came into being, and it's benefited, I think, from that burst of fresh energy. It means that as a standalone institution, we sometimes say we're still learning, we're still evolving. Within a year or two of our foundation, Microsoft was founded, Apple was founded, and so we've sort of begun to come of age in this extraordinary era of data and technology. And so we feel, I guess, 50 years young at this juncture, and looking ahead to the next 50 years where I think we're going to change and grow again.
Now, one of the cornerstones, and if you haven't been to the British Library, one of the most striking features when you go in is a wonderful plaza, but you see this glass enclosed stack of books that are just magnificent.
Yeah, they are.
King George III's collection.
King George III's personal collection of books. So, look, for those of you who have been there, you'll know what Carla's talking about. Inside, if you come into the library, you walk over a piazza, and by the way, the piazza is the roof of our stacks. So I often say it's not really a square, a town square, it's a roof. You just happen to be able to walk over it. And that's where the majority of our collections in London are stored. But there's one particular collection which has to be on public display. And it is indeed the personal collection that King George III, who I know is remembered in the UK and here for certain other things
Well, we'll talk about
he
this.
was involved with, and that's cool too. But to us, he was, I was going to say a bibliophile, but that's not even quite right. It was more like Wikipedia or something. He wanted genuinely, in a true curious-minded way, to scour the world and sent his scouts out. He didn't go to these shops himself, but to send out his agents and scouts to bring back the greatest, most up-to-date knowledge of its time in many, many languages, very much in the tradition of what we are. And after his death, in the early 19th century, it was agreed that this collection would be handed over to the nation, to the British Museum, in fact, with the proviso that it had to be not just publicly accessible and usable, which it is to this day. If you come to the library, you can order up any of those books, but it had to be publicly visible as well. And so at the museum, it was in what's now in the Enlightenment Gallery, and when the new building was built, the decision was taken, I think inspired, again, in a transatlantic spirit, partly by the Beinecke Library in America, a huge, in Yale, so a huge glass tower that glows with light, 6 stories. And one of the things we found is that as new generations of younger users come into the library, who maybe spend most of their time studying through laptops or screens, they all kind of want to sit close to King George's library. It's like a magnet. So no, we're very proud to have that. And
It's
still
so
active.
striking, and I know that you saw some of the plans that the Library of Congress
Yeah.
has to relocate Thomas Jefferson's library.
Yes, that's very exciting.
So the same
Yeah.
types of things. So
Yeah.
I just have to, on the, in terms of the treasures, and you have that recently though, and this is hot off the presses, the Guinness Book of World Records came to both of us, the British Library and the Library of Congress, just to decide which one was the largest library in the world. Let me just say that the Library of Congress won, but let's talk about how things are counted, because you have items and it became this, and you'll know.
We've established that you have nearly 2 centuries on us here. You've had
Had
to.
our conversation, we're moving Thomas Jefferson, but there is a friendly rivalry, and not even rivalry, camaraderie, with national libraries and our partners like the British Museum or and here the Smithsonian and that. But when you look at the treasures that you have, and that was one of the inspirations when we visited the British Library several years ago. Not only was I jealous about how busy it was bustling with events. You had all types of programs going on. People were hanging out. And that piazza, you had gelato. I mean, it was like happening. People were drinking coffee, even, not just tea. And then we went, and then they had the Treasures Gallery they had the Beatles. And just J.K. Rowling, all of that cool British stuff on display. And then your store. I didn't even want to buy any. I don't even like green. But the way you displayed things, there was a green book and a green purse. I almost got it. It was wonderful. And one of the things we just did directly from you was, in these different colored books, you had crime classics. And so now the Library of Congress has a series, and we gave you a copy
Did, thank you very much.
of the Library of Congress. But just think about, just share some of the treasures that you have and the activities.
The treasures. Yes, I mean, no, Carla, I mean, we need to explain. Carla, you came to the library maybe 6 years ago, 7 years
Yes,
ago?
right after I became
And I
a friend.
think maybe it was like a memorable thing for both of us. And thank you. You clearly, we're touched that it made an impression on you. You,
Oh my
of course, made an impression on us. And I should say we've been watching with admiration the things that have been happening here. So this is a dynamic sector, even if there is friendly rivalry over size. But yeah, I think we'll accept very slightly bigger. Slightly different kind of library, congressional, but nonetheless different. And
We can listen.
but that world you describe of, I suppose what you're talking about actually is we're not yet in, what you're describing is not yet the reading rooms
No.
of the library. It's the spaces that are free and 7 days a week. And I think one thing we gently have done over the years is just find every way we can to say you are welcome. This is for everyone. It is open. It is free. And yes, no judgment. If you just want to come in and hang out, if you want to come in and meet, we did indeed upgrade the coffee.
You moved the
They are
cafeteria. Tell
we
them
moved-
about
yeah,
that.
no, there was a piece of dead space quite near the front, and now one of London's best coffee makers, the Origin Cafe, is now there. And actually, gradually, these very grand and beautiful spaces have just become, I hope, genuinely hope, a place that's comfortable for everyone to be. In fact, I was on a bus from my house to the library about 2 days ago, and just occasionally nice things happened. There were two teenage girls discussing which desk they were going to try and get in the front area, because it's very competitive to get the really nice ones. So definitely different generations now come in and just want to be there, partly, I think, because in this very intense, screen-dominated, noisy world, it's quite hard, especially if you're just an ordinary young person around, to find a place where you can just think, a place that is literally engineered to calm you down, to slow you down, and be with other people who are also wanting to do that. And yes, in the public spaces, people are chatting and they're buying coffee and shopping occasionally. But at the heart of it is a kind of library thing going on, which is about people quietly helping each other to concentrate and to be in a beautiful space. And that's become, I'm not sure we planned for that exactly, except that we just put out a few more casual public desks with decent PowerPoints, but that was about it. Since then, the users have sort of self-curated that ambience and experience, and we've then tried to go with the direction that they've set. And this is unfinished business. We're still working on how to do that. And then, yes, beyond that, also for free, also 7 days a week, is the Treasures Gallery, which again, I hope people who have visited have had a chance to see. It is a thing of wonder. In some ways, I think it's almost crazy because it's all one room, and it just jostling together. You've got Jane Austen's writing desk there, or the earliest dated printed book there. There is a little glorified cupboard in the corner that says Magna Carta, and that is indeed Magna Carta.
You have a Gutenberg Bible.
We do have a beautiful Gutenberg Bible here. Yeah, I think we were whispering that there are 3 perfect Gutenberg Bibles, and it might be you, us, and the Bibliothèque Nationale. So it's good. But yes, that's also there in the Treasures. And I'm fascinated to hear your ambitions here, because these things never stay still. And I think if we build, which we hope to do, an extension at the rear of our library, we're hoping that we can maybe liberate some of our other spaces to have a slightly expanded, more generous display, interpretation, storytelling of that collection, because small as we are in comparison with your collection, with 170 million items to deal with.
178.
178 million, exactly. There are countless millions of stories to be told that way, and we want to tell more of them.
And that's what inspired us with our new plan to have a treasures gallery.
Okay.
It's going to be right up there,
Yeah.
and to have the rotating part, because there are so many things there. And when you think about the importance, though, of having things being inviting, you still maintain the reading rooms, the sanctity of the reading rooms for the scholars or researchers, or how do you define that, though?
We do. I mean, the reading rooms are also for everyone, or I should say nearly everyone. They're for everyone internationally, by the way, anyone here can come. They are not currently for the under 18s, but apart from that, all you have to do is come to the library, and we need proof of address, because for some of the published materials, and for security reasons, we need that. And actually, full disclosure, it used to be much tougher than that. And that folk memory is still really strong in the UK. And I meet many, many people who think it's extremely difficult to get into the reading rooms of the British Library. They think that you need a PhD or you need a professor's letter. And actually, 30 years ago, that was true. So, and I think, Carla, you know this from, it's maybe, I mean, public libraries are always never this way, but in the more research library world, there was a protectiveness, perhaps, which we're gradually turning inside out and saying, no, this is for everyone. So actually, I think we'd probably say that the reading rooms in our London base, there are 11 of them, all quite close to each other with a slightly different theme and character. And it's not so much that they are for scholars, although scholars love them, but they are for anyone who actually wants to be in that kind of environment where you are not just in a genuinely quiet space, but where you do suddenly unlock the power of the reference librarians, the experts, And indeed, of course, you do then have the magic key to order up and ask for physically anything in the collection. And indeed, by the way, to access some of the restricted digital content that we hold on legal deposit and so on. And that, it's like a gradation of experience. And I don't know if we're going to talk about the pandemic, but that was the habit that maybe did get lost in the pandemic, and we're just beginning to bring the reading rooms back to life. I think we're about up to maybe 60% occupancy on a typical day, whereas in the older days it was more like 80%. So I think we'll get there. But one thing that we have done, we've been prompted to do for the first time actually, is advertise the reading rooms. And actually market our core, what you might call our core service,
How do you
which
do
we always
that?
took for granted previously.
Wait a minute, we're not there yet.
Okay.
We're
You've got to
not
come back
there
to
yet.
London,
We
Carla.
have live at the
Come and ride the
Well,
underground,
one
your
of the things that
metros.
really impressed me, though, when I was there, I sat in on one of your classes for young teenagers.
Oh, yeah.
And you had one of your senior curators taking them through and using, it was quite, he was very scholarly, you could tell with the things, but he had them looking on the map of Great Britain and talking about language and accents and how they pronounce things. And of course, the U.S. people in the back were like, wait till you hear us talk. Where do you think we're from? But the kids loved it. So you have a really robust education program like that.
Yeah. No,
where you get your curators involved.
We do. And I mean, honestly, the curators have been fantastic, especially over this last 10 years. When we launched our previous strategy called Living Knowledge in 2015, we quietly, we didn't ask permission, but we rewrote the purposes of the library. We just went back to basics, and we tried to express in plain language what the library exists to do. And for the first time, we wrote a proper learning purpose in there. And we expressed our commitment to inspire learners of all ages with learning experiences. And I think that was a signal, because the building, a wonderful 25-year-old magnificent London building we're very proud of, but it was built without a learning space in the spec. That just hadn't, on that journey we were talking about opening up, maybe back in the 1980s when that design was being fixed, a national library, a national research library was not seen, automatically at least, as somewhere where school classes would come in. And so this is another part of that journey. And I think with Living Knowledge, we encoded learning as one of our core purposes. And we've been investing in the team, raising funds. We rely quite a bit on philanthropy in this area to really grow the whole learning program. We've trebled, I think, our physical figures. When we do build our extension, we'll be able to double them again and actually put a learning space right at the heart of the library, so that young people, children, school classes can not always be heard, but can be seen, seen around the place, and they in their turn can be exposed to the wonders and treasures. And yes, I think that process has changed the curator's sense of their role very willingly, and I think they've enjoyed it, but they've come on a journey to realize that the wisdom and knowledge they have can be communicated not just to maybe their academic peers, but to a 9-year-old who hasn't yet got any fixed idea about what the world might be for them, and can have a transformatory experience. And
one of the things that helps people think about that is to go back to when they were a 9-year-old or 7-year-old. What was it that led you, what experiences did you have that led you to be the PhD in whatever right now? Yeah. And they would say, oh, the British Library, and I got a chance to... I mean, I hope so. I mean, I think that is one of the thoughts that
do now. We used to talk 10 years ago about maybe inspiring the researchers of tomorrow. But now I think that's beginning to come true in front of our eyes. We've got 9-year-olds who were 19-year-olds now and really are in the academic space and doing their research. So I think it is, that's part of the interest of being this relatively young institution in this current form, is that it feels like we're growing a generation for whom I hope the idea of the serious library is not something alien or distant, but actually like a birthright and something that's natural.
And that's what's different about national libraries, because the Library of Congress, for instance, is de facto the National Library, the Bibliothèque Nationale. And there's a difference with the public libraries, the local libraries.
Well, it's like all these library conversations, it's about difference for sure, and national libraries have very, very particular, often quite complicated roles, and we're all slightly different there. Whereas public libraries have their own character, and they tend to be lending libraries or circulating libraries. They tend to be very rooted in their communities. But I think one of the organic changes we've felt in ourselves, and we've then gone with the flow and pushed ourselves to go further, is to connect or maybe reconnect with the public libraries in the UK. I think when I came to the BL in 2012, I think it had been as an institution through a phase of establishing itself quite rightly in its new building, and was maybe quite distant from the main public library system, which is of course a completely constitutionally separate thing. Our public libraries are managed by our local authorities, our local governments. But we began to reach out to some of the most dynamic public library leaders and authorities across the UK after we published Living Knowledge, and said, do you want to just work with us in ways that even we don't quite know what it means, but it just might be interesting to see what happens when a national library comes together with a public library. And we got actually just to complicate things, our other national libraries in Scotland and Wales were part of this. And out of this came what we call the Living Knowledge Network, which is now a pan-UK network, not of every public library, but quite a lot of public libraries, the ones who really want to maybe do things differently. And it's a living experiment where with events like this, we would live stream into our partner libraries, and real audiences would come in live and be posting questions during a live stream, and that's created a different kind of network. Once a year now, when we do one of our big temporary exhibitions in our London gallery, we work with our public library partners with using our curatorial skills and a panel structure to help them curate local versions of the exhibition simultaneously, often using their own collections. And that's proven to be a really powerful and different kind of experience. And I mean, I'm thinking recently we did one of our smaller exhibitions in London called Chinese and British, about the history of the Chinese-British community. But we did versions of it in libraries across the UK through the Living Knowledge Network, and I think we calculated we had 660,000 people visited a version of that exhibition through the public library network. Not seeing our content, but seeing the storytelling that had come out of our exhibition. So I think is this about similarity or about difference? I think it's about complementarity, and it's changed us because it's made us understand the community connection that actually only public libraries can really have, I think. But I hope it's also maybe helped public libraries benefit a little bit from just the sheer brand power or convening power that a national library can give.
So what happened when you had the Blockbuster Harry Potter.
Oh, yeah.
exhibit.
Yes.
I mean, we're talking blockbuster because you had the
Yeah.
Harry Potter exhibit. That must have been truly phenomenal. We heard about it over.
Oh, good. I'm
the
glad
phone.
that.
Oh, yeah.
And we did actually do a version of it in New York at New York Historical. Yes, I mean that was actually where we pioneered this pan UK local library version, and yes, in fact, that reached 750,000 people, so even more. But in a way, as you say, that's a blockbuster subject. That's a world famous brand, and yes, it was a bit of a step change as an exhibition for us. It was one of the first times I think we'd done an exhibition focused on the work of a living writer, and we did it, I hope, in a very uniquely British Library way, because we wanted to bring our own historic manuscript, our global historic collections into play. So we themed it around the history of magic, rooted through the Hogwarts curriculum, and we turned the gallery into Hogwarts, but with really remarkable, serious collection items there. And yes, that since has gone on to tour the world, and there's still a Google Arts and Culture version if you want to look at it. Look at it online.
That really created. Would you mind sharing with people your background, your personal background? I think it's really cool.
Interesting. Yeah, I'm happy. I'm happy to do that. I mean, I have a really simple career CV, which is not a librarian. At university, I studied classics, which qualifies you for absolutely, well, being polite, absolutely everything, but you could say absolutely nothing as well. And so I had that interesting final year of university moment, and maybe just it's a generational thing, what I realized I loved and had grown up with, particularly in the UK, was broadcasting, radio, television. And I had the great privilege of joining the BBC as a trainee in my early 20s. And I kind of kept meaning to leave and do something else, but just to say 29 years passed, and I was a producer, filmmaker, director, and then went on to become more of a channel executive, and increasingly involved in the digital side of the BBC. And it is an extraordinary institution. It's another great British institution with the word British in the title, with lots of complexities and challenges. And I think I'd always said you would only leave the BBC in the unlikely event that something even more interesting were to happen to present itself. And in the digital work we were doing at the BBC, it was the early days of streaming, and we were already beginning to think, what does it mean to convert ourselves into a digital organization as a broadcaster, where actually content is no longer ephemeral, but it becomes like a collection, it becomes a permanent thing. And we began to talk to some British institutions that were pioneering in this space. And that was when I first met the British Library team. And I filed away. I was very impressed by them, and they were doing great work. This was under Lynn Brindley, my very distinguished predecessor at the BL. I had not thought of it as a career option, Carla. That was not in my mind at all. But when Lynn announced her retirement, I just had a private message from someone, I think, on the board there, and said, is it the kind of thing I'd consider getting interested in? And I said, no, really, maybe. And then the more I found out about it, the more seduced. And in the end, I put my name forward for it I took it very seriously. I said, yes, this is one of the most, as you must know, being here. These are extraordinary roles that are a great privilege. And that was, yes, getting on for 12 years ago. That was in 2012. So I did make the switch from media to the National Library world. But I can only say it never felt like a jolt. I left the BBC on a Tuesday and started at the library on the Wednesday.
Wow.
And they are both institutions that are, as Library of Congress is, interested in everything.
Yes.
They're kind of generous and capacious, and they're committed in an absolutely non-profit way to draw people in and tell stories and make knowledge available and try and help people make sense of the world. And actually, to my surprise, maybe to the library's surprise, it turned out there was quite a lot of what we'd been doing at the BBC that actually felt quite natural as the evolution, at least, of the British Library. So yes, but as you say, an unusual background, I guess, by the standards of the sector.
With some unusual times, too.
But
Because
unusual
then
times and...
Pandemic, you mentioned that.
Oh, yes, well, indeed. I don't know what to say about the pandemic, I think, and I'd be interested to hear your reflections here. I mean, we telephoned each other, I think,
Yes,
in the early stages of it, really just in a sort of almost a mutual exchange of knowledge combined with cry for help, really, because what do you do when, however digital you are, and we both are as institutions, and both are great pioneers. And sure enough, by the way, when it became clear that we were going to have to close the building, it was March the 20-something, 2020, we did immediately tweet, as we used to say in those days. We tweeted hashtag BL is open, and we meant it. In other words, we were saying we're a digital organization as well, and in every conceivable way we can remain relevant and open to people, we will be. And the teams switched to a digital-first mentality as best they could in countless ways, and that was great. But it was an instant lesson for me in actually the fact that the power of libraries is about the combination, that distinctive combination of the physical and the digital. And if you rip the physical part out and close it, then you're a good ghost of your former self, but you are a ghost. And I think it was a difficult period. We learnt a lot. We became more digitally adept in all sorts of ways. We learnt to promote and encourage use of our digital collections. We realized how big our digitized collections are, and that's great. Although we also learned, of course, what we can't offer digitally, which is most of our in copyright 20th and 21st century content. And in terms of cultural events and talks like this and stage events, we'd already begun to live stream a little bit. And of course, we then learned to do it on Zoom and other platforms like that. And it was great, and we found we were getting a global footprint for some of those events. And so in that sense, we were able to promote ourselves more fluently as an international institution. So it had some positives. And interestingly, as the sort of rebuild of society got going, it was interesting that libraries opened ahead of other cultural institutions, quite rightly, and the role certainly of public libraries as just civic centres, community centres, became recognised by government, which was a healthy thing because libraries get taken for granted, and they became one of the safe spaces. And yes, for us, we opened as soon as we could, and as we were saying earlier, we've been rebuilding our footfall. I would say now around the public spaces of the building, we're as lively and busy as ever. As a working organization, we're still in that interesting zone that everyone running a business or an organization is in around what's known as hybrid working, and huge national libraries like ours with large staff cohorts cover a multitude of different work types, and some of our staff have jobs where, of course, they're on site every single day. They're serving users, they're meeting people, they're handling physical books. At the other end, we have very, very digital teams, often of a younger generation for whom the pandemic was barely influence their life because they were used to working in a mobile way and working from home. And I think we're just still on a journey to understand where that is going to settle as a professional community. Because, and I'm trying not to be too generational about this and say you have to be in the office all the time, but in my heart I also feel there's a power to being in a real space with real people as a professional community that cannot be replaced by Microsoft Teams or other interesting
We just converted.
digital products.
I know. Well, one other thing we just, the Library of Congress just announced a new 5-year plan.
Oh yes.
And of
Nice.
course, the British Library just announced theirs,
Did.
a 7-year plan. Oh boy. But what were some of the things that were, that you found that carried over from
Oh yeah.
pandemic?
No.
This is a beautiful, Knowledge Matters, 2023 to 2030.
2030. Yes. So we just published this this year.
It's beautiful.
This is the sequel to Living Knowledge that I talked about. And I mean, Carla, there's a lot of continuity
Okay.
with what we have been doing. And I was hearing about your strategic plan, talking to the executive team today, and similarly here. And of course, because there are huge projects that we're doing, whether they're big digital investments or capital programs and capital projects. And indeed, those statements of mission and purpose that I talked about, those are intact and they stay the same. But it is one of our values, I'm sure yours, to adapt to a changing world. And you'll see on the back of Knowledge Matters, there are certain themes which run through all our purposes that we are thinking about, which were there implicitly maybe before. But I mean, to give a flavor of some of them, you'll see coming through this, even more around access, engagement, and inclusion, taking that word everyone in our mission statement and just pushing it a bit further. What other barriers can we remove to letting people enjoy and make use of this extraordinary collection? We talk about modernizing our library services because actually for all the excitement and expansion, these are big logistical operations and you need to be good at it. And we've got a whole program of reinvestment in the basics that we're going to be focusing on. We're talking about deepening our partnerships because, I mean, I talked about our public library partnerships, but we've also been partnering with local communities or with other organizations in our immediate neighborhood, or with academic libraries in new ways, or commercial partnerships. And I think it dawned on us midway through Living Knowledge that actually there's hardly anything we do that isn't a partnership in some way. And it's always better when it is, because broad as the British Library is, we kind of touch on every aspect of national life. And there's always someone you can work with who can push it further or who can bring you into other communities or other connections. So deepening our partnerships across every single thing that we do, I think, is going to be one of our themes. We talk, a fourth theme is about sustainability and the climate emergency we're all deeply worried about and for which we do not have answers, but we know as energy-intensive cultural and learning institutions, we've got to find the right answer for. And so we've put that in there as an aspiration and a theme, but I'll be very honest to say we need help from everyone who cares about institutions like this to know what is the role and how do we adapt what we do, how can we unlock knowledge in ways that help the cause and so on. And then finally we talk about new spaces, north and south, that important reassertion of the physical and reinvesting in our physical spaces alongside our digital. And in a UK context, we talk about north and south, because even I tonight have been talking about our London building, but actually a third of our staff and 2/3 now of our national physical collection and a lot of our basic operations are in the north of England, not in the south, in a place in Yorkshire called Boston Spa. Don't know how many people in the room have heard of Boston Spa. And hooray! We have librarians in the room, I think. Great. Boston Spa, by the way, when you asked me about the origin myth of the British Library, Boston Spa was the home to the National Lending Library for Science and Technology. It was a very pioneering operation placed right in the geographical center of the British Isles. Before the internet, how did you get knowledge to libraries and universities? You used the motorway system, and so they chose a location right in the middle of the road system. Now, wonderfully for us, it means we're deeply rooted in a place that is not London. And part of our mission under Knowledge Matters is to actually now make ourselves as visible in the north of England as we are in the south. And so we have an aspiration, you'll see in there, to raise a lot of money. It's a huge project, but to open up in the nearest city to Boston Spa, which is Leeds, which some of you may know, wonderful city, very dynamic city. We're hoping to take over a great heritage building, an old mill building in Leeds, and open up a proper reading room, public space, exhibition gallery, learning center, so that we can actually, as a physical service as well as a digital service, truly reach, maybe within 90 minutes travel time, probably 11, 12 million people as we can in London. So whether we'll achieve that by 2030, I don't know, but the journey has to start now.
And your values, when you put that, we put users at the heart of everything we do.
Oh,
We
yeah.
listen, innovate, and adapt to a changing world. We embrace equality, fairness, and diversity. We act with openness and honesty. Important to put that, the values.
Yeah, so we put our, Carla's reading the values of the library, which we crafted at the time we launched Living Knowledge, and we did it in collaboration with our staff. And to be honest, I didn't know if they would necessarily take root or last, but it was interesting. I remember within about a year of launching Living Knowledge, people were calling us out occasionally on behavior and saying, are you living up to the values there? And then actually at the end of our leadership team meetings, we started asking one of the team at the end of every meeting just to do a little 2 or 3 minute review of the meeting we've just had against the values, to say, did we actually put users at the heart of everything we do? Did we ever? And occasionally the answer was yes, but occasionally you call yourself up short. Oh my God, we've been talking about technology or bureaucracy or system. We forgot to talk about the audience of the users. So they have taken root, and so this time around we literally put them on the back cover because we wanted to hold ourselves to them. Doesn't mean we always live up to them because they're aspirational, but I think they've helped us at least have the conversation, and sometimes the difficult conversation, about how you change and evolve as an employer or as a workplace or as a service provider.
The person who's listening intently is our Principal Deputy Librarian, Mark Sweeney, who tries to make sure that we keep the values at the forefront of what we do. So I want to just publicly thank Mark for that. We didn't put it on the back, but it's there. So thank you, Mark.
Very good, Mark. Yeah,
Our executive meetings are similar.
Similar, yeah.
And he does that. So,
Interesting.
okay, now, friendly competition, but there is an opportunity for the Library of Congress. We call ourselves the Big Three. We know that in Washington there are a lot of gangs of 8, gangs of 6. We're the gang of 3. The British Library, Library of Congress, and the Bibliothèque Nationale. But other national libraries too. Welcome to Washington. But what are some of the ways we can work together? And what do you think? Well, we've been talking.
I mean, the world needs to know. Actually, we were looking at your amazing card catalogue. I'm so jealous you still have your card catalogue. That's fantastic. Earlier on,
We even have a book about it for sale.
yeah, I bet. No, you should. Very cool. But actually, metadata cataloging, the world looks to this organization for that, and our metadata teams collaborate with yours very deeply. And it sounds dry, and maybe it's not. It's the foundation of what we do. And so there's a lot of organic working that goes on always behind the scenes and curator to curator. The fun stuff kicks in perhaps when we can actually think about doing maybe joint projects. And in fact, the project, you talk about the big three, when that project that happened around France in the Americas, that brought British Library, Bibliothèque Nationale, Library of Congress together, and is an indication, of course, how bound together historically and therefore as a living culture we are. And I mean, I'm reflecting on all sorts of aspects of what we do. If you look at Knowledge Matters, you'll notice in the international section, we talk actually about renewing and deepening our focus on the Americas, USA for sure, Canada, South America as well, because I think we're ready to do that. We are just de facto, just as it was very moving for me to see what an astonishing British collection you are here, and we are probably one of the most important American collections outside the Americas. And so part of me this next 7-year period is finding ever new ways to do that. And we've got with us on this little delegation, not just Marcy Hopkins, our Director of International, but also Polly Russell, who's head of our Eccles Centre. And for those who don't know, the Eccles Centre at the British Library, founded 30 or something years ago by an endowment, is a centre devoted to American studies at the British Library. And that was based on the fundamental point that we do have these remarkable holdings of distinctly American content. And then, of course, beyond that, almost every corner of the British Library collection is full of material that actually can connect with people and their lives and memories here for obvious reasons to do with diversity and linguistic diversity and so on. And I think the Eccles Centre has done great work over the decades, particularly in the academic space, in the study space with fellowships. But I'm sure Polly would agree, we would love it now to move up a level and actually think even more about public engagement, creative activities, finding different ways to get sparks going between the British Library and our friends in the Americas through Library of Congress as the fundamental partner. And there's so many opportunities. And of course, we've already been talking today about 2026 and the 250th anniversary of the American Revolution. That's already sent sparks in my brain, not just about what might happen here, but also what we might do in the UK to tell a fresh story about what happened then, and the drama of that is still not fully known and understood.
Planned, but
so yes, so lots. Sorry, I'm
wasn't
talking on, but lots, I think, is.
Now you know that one of the reasons why Thomas Jefferson sold his personal library from Monticello.
I think I know where this is going, but yes.
If you don't know the story, there was a fire.
It's awful when fires accidentally break out.
Yes. And there was a certain British troupe that, for the rumor has it, that they used books from the nascent library collection to, and I was shown the fireplace where the books, where the British, it's over there. We'll take you tomorrow. So we do have a lot of work to do to mend fences and do that. So I just want to thank you so much for being here with us, because we've learned so much from you and the partnership and what we can do. In fact, we brought out the good silver if you got a chance to see the display.
Oh.
There was one personal thing for you that our manuscript people, remember that I showed you about your house?
They're really, this is really personal, but we moved house. This is a totally personal thing. We moved house in London 2 weeks ago, and it wasn't a house we'd ever really meant to move to, but we just happened to take a look at it and fell in love with it. And it's one of the oldest terrace houses in England. It's built before the Great Fire, which is extraordinary in itself, 1658. But 100 years later, in the 1750s to 80s, it was lived in by a then very famous, now rather forgotten in the UK, philosopher, economist, thinker, radical, preacher called Richard Price, who was a real pioneer of all sorts of things, but he was a great, great friend of the founding fathers of America. He was a great friend of Benjamin Franklin when Franklin was in London. He was a correspondent, and he was a great advocate in England for American independence, for the American Revolution. And he wrote about it, he advocated for it, and he was a great letter writer and receiver of letters. And this evening I had the great privilege in your manuscripts department of being taken in to see a letter written by Richard Price to Thomas Jefferson, a letter that was written in the house that I now live in.
Where's the mic?
And I have to say, that is just, wow.
All right. Did we?
Cannot quite say what that means. So thank you, thank you.
It's just too much. So when we visit, I don't know.
You can all come and visit the house. It's
Yeah, you got to do it.
quite cool.
I know
Form a
we
queue.
had a mic, a real mic, though. If anybody wanted to comment or
Yes, please,
question or
we're
something
open
like
to any
that,
questions
'cause
if anyone
this
does.
is your chance, because we could do it.
does.
And if not,
Which,
don't
there is a
be
hand.
shy now.
There is one hand going up. Okay.
I have a question about, your non-English language collection. I know the library's collections, we collect materials from Jakarta, Brazil, all around the world. Does the British Library collect materials in other foreign languages?
Thank you. Yes, we do. Yes, we do. It's sort of, I suppose, deep in the bones of the British Library as an institution. Same here. And we are an intensely multilingual collection and always have been. And of course, that is partly to do with British mercantile, imperial, colonial history, but it's also to do with, I think, some Enlightenment ideas about curiosity. I was talking about George III, and a lot of his collection is, of course, in multiple languages. And over the time, that's simply become an organic tradition at the British Library that we have continued at the margins, we can't do it huge, but to maintain a degree of linguistic diversity in the collection, because actually we found that researchers, students, scholars, often they can't travel to other national libraries or travel the world, and actually we do believe, and it's a kind of responsibility to be a library of the world and for the world. And I don't know, you have to, why would you do that when every nation has a national library? And I can only say maybe a little part of the answer, as well as, by the way, the gratitude of many researchers who make use of this, but we had an amazing visit from the First Lady of Ukraine last autumn, and we were able to show her some of our Ukrainian collections, not just historic ones, but quite recent material. And I can only say it was a very moving moment, and thank goodness, I think, as we speak, my peer, your peer, Lyubov Dubrovina, who's the librarian of the National Vernadsky Library in Kiev, the collection is still intact, the building is still intact, but what's happening there is a reminder that these collections can be fragile, and actually there's a mutuality in the National Library network in particular where we can support each other and maintain a kind of, use our resources to maintain plurality, and just a sense that it's a bit like the sustainability question. This is one planet, one world knowledge, and if we can play what part we can in it and not get trapped just in one language tradition or one way of thinking, I hope will be a better, more useful library. So, short answer is yes, but it's it's a continued expense. We have to justify it, but so far we are continuing to do that. Yeah.
Yeah, national libraries.
Thank you.
Sir Keating, we share the same king. I'm just wondering, well, last year we lost Her Majesty the Queen, and I'm wondering...
We are hearing you. Thank you.
I was wondering what you're doing to commemorate her life and reign.
Oh, that's a lovely question. I mean, Her Majesty, thinking about 25 years at St Pancras, her name is literally carved into stone because she officially opened the building 25 years ago this year. So we think of her every day, and she was a great friend of the library. But I think I don't think we would memorialize her in a way that's not sort of natural or distinctive for us. And what I like to think of, we did do when she died, we did immediately reach into the collections to find, particularly just instances of where her extraordinary life had touched the story of the National Library, and that was a very moving and simple thing to do, and I'm very glad we did. And we had a memorial book, and people could come in and sign and write messages for Her late Majesty, and that felt very right and proper. But I think now, what I suppose I think of there, and I should say one other thing, which is that we collect digitally on the web, and for that period we redoubled our efforts to preserve websites that were being created in her memory, so that we wanted to make sure that the sometime rather fragile memory of the internet was deepened, so that it was a classic moment of deep national importance. So what I hope is that we've sort of added to the record a little bit as her life, at the end of her life, and now going forward, she will be represented in countless ways, millions of ways in our collection, and that's the proper memorial that we can give. We can say to people, really every detail, every moment of that remarkable life is held in our collection, as it is, by the way, for the unbroken line of monarchs before. So, but thank you for the question.
That is lovely.
Very, very moving still to reflect on that. Thank you. Other questions? I think maybe a microphone just so people can...
Hi, Sir Keating. Very nice to meet you. So I have a question that is not so relevant to your library career. It's relating to your education at Oxford. So you read the classics there. So I was wondering, how did you get there, and what did you learn, and what that kind of education, how that kind of education contribute to your future career? Thank you.
So it's a lovely question, and I won't give a long answer, but I mean I will. It was partly going for it was a kind of personal passion. Maybe I'd had a teacher who'd inspired me, and I'd rather fallen a little bit for the ancient Greek language. I'm not a very good linguist, but there was something about the language I loved. And I knew I was going to do a humanities degree of some kind. Maybe an English degree. I reflect I would probably, and I do read English literature all the time, I would never otherwise immerse myself in some of those great texts or get the chance to, I don't know, to read the Odyssey in the original language. What a privilege that was, and I did do that. So everyone who does even that degree, I think, gets something different out of it. For me, it was probably diving deeply into maybe just a handful of writers and spending time with them, whether it was the poet Horace or Homer or Pindar and so on, and getting a deep sense of maybe an era of history that I cared about. But as I was jokingly saying earlier on, I don't think I was thinking of a career when I did it, and maybe I would never condemn someone actually for doing a degree that does lead directly to a career. That's a very proper and sensible thing to do. But I suppose if I do look back on it retrospectively and in a less flippant way, at the very least it, as a particular course of study, and I hope people still occasionally get the chance to do a degree like that, it does at least present an interesting combination of maybe different sides of the brain. You have to be quite meticulous on some of the linguistic or translation side of it, but also for me, it opened up a world of literature and the life of creativity and the imagination that is meaningful for me, and I guess has influenced some of the work I've tried to do in television or in the storytelling that we do at the library. So, thank you.
And our teams have spent 2 days working together and learning from each other. And I just want to thank you for your support and friendship. We're still going to continue our friendly rivalry.
You bet.
Okay, we're not going to stop there, but we also are going to continue our partnership. So
Definitely.
Thank you.
Carol,
for
thank
being
you.
here.
That was wonderful. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you for your questions.